Good evening, it's 8 o'clock. I'm Sally Baudet, live from Johannesburg. Your top stories tonight.
This matter, and in the interests of good governance, I have decided to accept his resignation.
Nhlanhla Nene is out and Tito Mboweni is in.
Conscientiously and to the best of my ability.
Now raise your right hand and say, please help me God.
So help me God.
We'll bring you all the reaction to the new Finance Minister's appointment. And in Port Elizabeth, tempers flare in court as Pastor Timothy Omotoso and two co-accused refuse to plead on multiple charges of human trafficking, sexual assault and rape. Yes, and let's start with that big story tonight. We have a new finance minister. Earlier this afternoon, President Ramaphosa announcing he was accepting Nhlanhla Nene's resignation and appointing former Reserve Bank Governor Tito Mboweni to the job. Now here's the moment the announcement was made.
Over the last few days, there has, throughout the length and the breadth of our country, been quite a lot of discussion among South Africans on matters that arose in the course of the testimony of Minister Nhlanhla Nene at the Commission of Inquiry into State Capture. Now, as a consequence of these developments, Minister Nene this morning submitted a letter of resignation to me in which he requested that I should relieve him of his position of Minister of Finance of the Republic of South Africa. After due consideration of the circumstances surrounding this matter and in the interests of good governance, I have decided to accept his resignation. Even though he has not been implicated in any act of wrongdoing himself. And in the wake of Mr. Nene's resignation, I have decided to appoint Mr. Tito Mboweni as the Minister of Finance with immediate effect.
Well, the news of Nene's departure has largely been welcomed. It's a bold move, but will it set an example for others in Cabinet who have question marks over their conduct? And is Tito Mboweni's return to Cabinet after a long time away from the spotlight a good thing for our economy? Let's discuss this now with our reporter following the story, Erin Bates, and economist Lumkile Monde. Thank you very much for joining us here on eNews. Erin, I'm going to start with you. We heard in that clip President Ramaphosa very clear that Nhlanhla Nene is not implicated in any wrongdoing. Now, if you listen to the EFF, they tell a very different story. What next for Nene? Is he off the hook?
Well, he's not off the hook in terms of all of the questions that have been raised. Now, we must remember he spoke under oath at the inquiry and disclosed for the first time several Gupta meetings that he'd previously never disclosed publicly. That's the first issue. The second issue is the substance of those various meetings with the Gupta family, mainly RJ Gupta, between 2010 and 2014. And finally, the questions that were raised about his conduct when he was a non-executive chairperson of the PIC when he was Deputy Finance Minister. All of the allegations, all of the kind of question marks around all of these issues have not been resolved. All we know is that there's been enough at stake here for him to send a letter to the President, and you actually see Ramaphosa there wringing his hands almost as he talks about deliberating over the matter, and now Nene is out the picture.
Lumkile Monde, do you think Nene's departure is a good thing for our economy?
Very much for governance. Remember that the Minister of Finance is a measure or yardstick of whether the investors who buy our securities can really gain confidence and trust with the incumbent in that position. So given the lying that he made, it was the right decision for him to move on so that the position of the finance minister remains what it is. Somebody who can be trusted by all stakeholders because he is the risk that South Africa people put on.
He had to go. A lot of people are saying there are other cabinet ministers who face much more serious allegations. Do you think some of those are considering penning a resignation letter tonight, or is that a little too hopeful?
Well, Well, I don't know if that's good politics, Sally. You know, people are unlikely to jump unless perhaps nudged or even pushed. But of course, we know, for example, that Mulusi Gigaba was before Parliament talking about the naturalization of members of the Gupta family. But Bile Dlamini has also come up. The EFF, for example, in their response to Mboweni's appointment, saying that they want to see other ministers being sacked and getting the boot for their involvement, not only in meetings with the Guptas, but other very serious matters in governance. I think it's very optimistic to think people are going to raise their hand and say, I'm out.
Certainly sets the bar very high. Is Tito Mboweni beyond reproach? We know he served in Nelson Mandela's cabinet as Labour Minister, 10 years as Reserve Bank Governor, out of the spotlight for quite a long time. Is he going to fit the bill?
Well, it is a stopgap measure. I hope after the elections we get a new finance minister.
Why do you hope that?
Yeah, because he's the person who's facilitated. When he was the governor of the central bank, he talked about how much he loved his Afrikaners at the expense of integrating and transforming the Reserve Bank. And recently, he's been talking about nationalization, taking over the mines and giving the state 40%, creating a state bank. And really, who is he? What does he represent? So I remain very concerned about his policy position, particularly since he's been out of government for quite a while.
So you see him as ideally a stopgap measure? A
stopgap measure, I think beyond that, because I don't know what he represents, what his political stance, what his economic stance. And I look forward to seeing him in the 6 months that I think is going to last. And then thereafter, hopefully, get somebody that we can then understand. And the investors, there's more the investors, whether, given that we're raising more money to fund Eskom and others, whether investors can trust him and put money into South Africa.
Absolutely crucial times for our economy. Thank you very much to both of you. That was economist Lumkile Monde and our reporter Erin Bates. Still ahead, we'll go to Port Elizabeth for high drama in the High Court. And in Cape Town, 2 more metro trains set alight as PRASA is briefing Parliament on the country's rail network. To Port Elizabeth now, and a dramatic day in the Eastern Cape High Court. Pastor Timothy Omotoso and 2 co-accused were asked to plead to charges of human trafficking, sexual assault and the rape of over 60 girls and women. But the 3 accused refused to enter their pleas, and 2 members of their congregation attempted to force their way into court. Sandy McCowan reports.
Pastor Timothy Omotoso and his co-accused stood up after every single one of the 63 formal and 34 alternative charges against them were read out in court. But the trio refused to plead, forcing Judge Mandela Makaula to step in.
You refuse to plead. Okay, the court in terms of Section 109 of the Criminal Procedure Act 51 of 1977 shall enter a plea of not guilty on your behalf. You may sit down.
Meanwhile, 2 off-duty police women who are congregants of the Jesus Dominion International Church misrepresented themselves as protocol observers in order to force their way into the packed courtroom. The police asked them to leave, but they refused. In the end, they were dragged out. The police say they will do an internal investigation into the conduct of the women. Outside, Omotoso's supporters were entertained. Now one of the complainants is expected to take the stand as the state's first witness. Sandy McCowan, Port Elizabeth.
Let's take a look at other stories making headlines this evening. Members of the Gauteng Shutdown Coordinating Committee marched on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange earlier today. Now, the committee wants the JSE to explain its plans to empower coloured people. It also wants to know how many coloured people are employed at the exchange and the number of shares they hold. The Gauteng Shutdown Committee says the JSE is the first of many organisations it plans to visit to make sure coloured communities are no longer excluded. The group has submitted a memorandum of demands to JSE officials. 2 more Metro Rail trains were set alight in Cape Town today, this while PRASA was briefing Parliament's Transport Committee. Now, the Passenger Rail Agency has all but admitted that our rail commuter network is on the brink of collapse. Officials told Parliament the cost of train damage could soon total R1 billion. The Transport Minister has agreed with PRASA that the State Security Agency and the Police Crime Intelligence must investigate. It's time to talk money. And of course, the big news, Tito Mboweni is our new finance minister. Very good evening to you, Motheo Kgaripa. You've had a chance to judge international response to Mboweni's appointment. How's it gone?
Well, it's been quite big news because South Africa is, of course, one of the big emerging markets that people look at. And in terms of volume of currency traded, the rand is also traded quite a bit in international markets as well. Well, while covering that, we've seen that Bloomberg has already covered the story as well, CNBC Africa, Financial Times as well. So investors do have the information now of who the finance minister is in Tito Mboweni. He's not a face they do not know, especially those that have been there for quite a long time. Of course, he did serve at, as a Reserve Bank governor for about 10 years and more as well. And he's a man that's quite trusted by the local markets. So those calls coming in locally to find out who he is and what he's about would be given a much better response to those international analysts. But we expect a more positive response tomorrow and more news coming in from international guys. But locally, because he is a Labour man, the former Reserve Bank governor, we've seen that local unions have also backed him and accepted the move. And analysts locally have looked at the move as a one that is market friendly from the president, given the situation that Treasury is in at the moment. As to what will happen next, we do not know. But we have an analyst who's looked at what this will mean for the currency going forward.
And I think the rand's been trading on a lot of factors other than our domestic politics and our domestic economic situation. I mean, South Africa, yes, we entered a technical recession, but the fact of the matter remains we've been bumbling along for a decade now. If we weren't in a technical recession, we're in an effective recession because population has been growing a lot more rapidly than the economy has been growing. So we have been going backwards on a per capita basis, and the market's been very aware of this, international investors, local investors. So at the margin, that hasn't had much to do with the rand weakness. Obviously, big announcements in terms of changes of finance ministers, that would be something to watch out for, the medium-term budget policy statement and a deviation away from a consolidation path. But the reality is that the rand has traded predominantly on the back of what's been happening internationally. 2018 has been an absolute disaster. Subsequent to January, 2018 has been an absolute disaster for emerging market sentiment. We've seen massive outflows from emerging markets, and we've seen South Africa has been the biggest sufferer of that because we're liquid and we're an emerging market. So, when there's a crisis happening in Turkey, when there's a crisis happening in Argentina, when the Fed is increasing interest rate faster than what they may have initially indicated, money flows out of emerging markets. And because South Africa is the most liquid emerging market, that money flows out of our market first.
Yes, indeed.
Lots to think about.
The piece going there. Let's take a look at the rand. Has the rand reacted to the news of the new finance minister?
Definitely. There was a lot of weakness that came out in the morning, with a little speculation around Nene's future. But when we did know the information late in the day, around 5 p.m. when the markets closed, in fact, the rand moved from 15.05 against the dollar in earlier day trade to about 14.66. It's strongest that we've seen in a couple of days. So far. We had that weakness of more than 3 weeks of weakness that we saw in earlier days. So a quick turnaround after that decision because, as I said, it's a market-friendly move from the president.
Let's take a quick look through the rest of the indicators now.
When we look at the rest of the indicators, the market was flat despite those news coming out before market close. But financials are strengthening because the rand has already picked up from those news. And in terms of mining shares, they were buoyed today about what is happening with the rand, and they took some gains today. Gold up more than 3%, with platinum also around the same margin, while resources closing off that positive trade margin. In commodities, gold down today at $1,187 an ounce, and platinum was up more than 0.5%, while Brent crude is at $84.79 a barrel. As I said, the rand picking up and punching above its weight today at 14.69 now against the US dollar. It's at 16 rand 88, firming up against the euro as well, and 19 rand 29 against the pound. So a good day for the local currency.
Yes, and a little bit of certainty, which is always a good thing. Thank you very much, Motheo Kgaripa. And we've got our weather news coming up in just a few moments. We've got Candace standing by. And Jeff, I've got a question for you. Can you do the shasha?
Let's see.
Can you do the shasha? We're going to end our bulletin with some new moves for the new minister, all about the shasha and why that song is trending after today's high-profile appointment.
Tito Mboweni.
Let's head down to Cape Town for weather news with Candice McKechnie. Before we go there, can you do the shasha?
Sure, Sally, I'm not sure about that. Maybe the cha-cha, but I think my expertise are best left to the weather at this point in time.
How's it looking
and
today?
Speaking of which, yes, definitely. Well, the hot weather was short-lived over the western part of South Africa, and we're back to cool and cloudy conditions, especially into Wednesday. You'll see this cold front, which will slip slightly south as we head into Wednesday. It brings in some fog along the western and southern coastline and keeps things cloudy, and we might even see a few drops of rainfall along the southern coastline. Hot for the rest of South Africa. We'll see a nice lot of thunderstorms developing yet again over the northeastern and eastern interior. In the Northern Cape, you'll see another sizzling hot day for Uppington and Prieska, both at 38 degrees. Quite a few of those highs still heading into the mid-30s. Lots of clouds streaming in over the western part of the country. In fact, a mostly cloudy day for the Western Cape, Cape Town at 22. A bit of light rain expected along that coastline, and quite a mix of temperatures as we head towards the Eastern Cape. In the mid-20s between Port Elizabeth and East London, right the way up to 37 in Graaff-Reinet, with thundershowers over the far northeastern parts. Hot with thundershowers over the western part of KwaZulu-Natal, sunny and warm for Durban at 28 degrees. Thundershowers are expected for the Mpumalanga Highveld, Ermelo at 28, with a mostly clear day for Bombela at 30. You'll see another warm day throughout Limpopo, quite a bit of cloud here as well. Thundershowers are forecast over the southwestern part of the province. That also extends through to Rustenburg at 34, with the rest of those highs in the low 30s for northwest. A predominantly dry day for the Free State, other than thundershowers for Harrismith at 29, Vereeniging at 30, with a partly cloudy and dry day, with isolated thundershowers for the rest of the province. Pretoria topping 32 and Johannesburg at 30 degrees. Thundershowers move into Bombela on Thursday. Still hot for much of the country, but with a chance of rain from Cape Town through to East London. And then by Friday, you'll see cooler temperatures with rain and cloud into the Eastern Cape, with a few thundershowers between Pietermaritzburg and Polokwane. That's all from the Weather Centre for now. Have a great night.
Thank you so much, Candice McKechnie in Cape Town. And finally, Finance Minister Tito Mboweni is not new to politics, but the former Labour Minister and Reserve Bank Governor is well known for a very different reason. He also has a song named after him, and as news of his appointment broke this afternoon, Shasha started to trend. Mpona Kana has a story.
Now raise your right hand and say, please help me God.
So help me God.
His name is Tito Mboweni. He's our new finance minister, and South Africans have these two words to welcome him. Some took to Twitter saying they wish the president had said when he introduced Mboweni, while others believe Parliament should introduce entrance songs for speakers. That's because in 2017, Casper Nyovest released a song with the title Tito Mboweni, obviously about money and making it big in the world. Millennials may only know of former Reserve Bank Governor Mboweni through that catchy hip-hop song. But that's about to change, and it seems the minister may be able to use the song and this picture where it seems he's about to pull a dab to connect with the younger generation. Mpona Kana, Johannesburg.
Well, let's recap your top stories once more before we go.
And in the interests of good governance, I have decided to accept his resignation.
Nhlanhla Nene is out and Tito Mboweni is in.
Conscientiously and to the best of my ability.
Now raise your right hand and say, please help me God.
So help me God.
Well, President Ramaphosa seems to think that Nene is off the hook, but others disagree. And will Tito Mboweni be more than just a stopgap minister? And in Port Elizabeth, tempest flare in court as Pastor Timothy Omatoso and two co-accused refused to plead on multiple charges of human trafficking, sexual assault and rape. From me and the team, it's a very good night.